Welcome to Got Grass, conversations with the legends and leaders of Bluegrass. You've enjoyed live Bluegrass at Guitar Town CT concerts in Hamden, Connecticut since 2008. From Tony Rice, Ralph Stanley, and Doyle Lawson to Tim O'Brien, Sierra Hull, and Billy Strings. Now you can go behind the scenes as we chat with your favorite Bluegrass stars. I'm your podcast host, Chris Worth. So my guest today on Got Grass is Mr. Ronnie Reno. So welcome, sir, to my podcast.
Yeah, glad to be here, Chris.
I always start out by asking musicians, what is a perfect day off for you these days?
Oh my. Well, let's see. I retired actually in 2019, so I've not did any any touring since then. I do a lot of things around the house with my youngest boy. So really, they're all day offs for me right now. But anyway, I used to enjoy my Mondays and Tuesdays and so forth and so on, but nowadays it's just basically everything's a holiday for me.
So you consider yourself basically retired from the music business as it were?
Yeah, basically I do. Chris, I was on the road for about 60 years, and so I finally just wore me down. I was still healthy, and my family said, "Hey, Dad, it's time for you to come on home." And my wife said the same thing, and so it was time for me to come back and enjoy, the family that I have. I have 4 beautiful little granddaughters, and I enjoy them all. And so I've got a beautiful wife and 2 great sons. So I chose to come on back to the house and enjoy that.
Yeah, say no more. I get it. I get it. So in your childhood, I know your father was a very well-known traveling musician when you were born, I guess, and kept on. But you ended up playing with him rather than waiting for him to come home. You went out and performed with him as a young kid.
I did. I was fortunate enough to grow up at a time when basically they were touring a lot, traveling a lot, but also doing a lot of television, a lot of recording. They were a multi-function band with Reno and Smiley. They did a lot of different things. And so fortunately I was born at the right time to where I got in on that. And I got in on that probably around the mid 50s, towards the end of the middle of the late 50s, something like that.
So do you actually remember the first time you went on stage with your dad? You do?
The first time I went on stage, I wasn't with my dad. I was with Red Smiley. He was working with a gentleman by the name of Cousin Wilbur, who played bass with Bill Monroe many years ago, back in the 40s. And Cousin Wilbur had a TV show over Nashville, North Carolina, and they toured and came through Union, South Carolina, and they had a talent contest. And so I joined the talent contest when I was maybe 5 or 6, something like that. And Red played guitar with me. So I actually went on stage with Red rather than my dad first time.
Were you playing the mandolin when you started out?
No, I was just singing. I was very, like 5, 6 years old. I didn't really pick up the mandolin until we basically went to Richmond, Virginia, and was at the Old Dominion Barn Dance. That's where I actually started singing with the band on Saturday nights. I was young and still in school, but anyway, they didn't have a mandolin player that played with them all the time. And so I said, well, hey, it's a small instrument and I'm small. And so if I ever wanted to go out and play with them on stage rather than just being a little featured vocalist, I better learn how to play something. So I started playing the mandolin back probably in maybe 57, 58, somewhere in that area.
So was that a mandolin that your dad had and handed to you, or did you have to go out and buy a mandolin to play? Was there one around?
He actually got our first mandolin in a pawn shop. And I think he paid $75 for it. And it was a little A4, a little A mandolin. And so I started playing that. And then I worked my way up to, I started out just playing rhythm with the band on all the songs and got to learning that. And so finally I started learning some lead work with Dad was showing me. He was a great mandolin player himself. And so Mac McGahey would work a lot with me on the old fiddle tunes. And so I finally got to where that I was good enough to, in the summers, to go out and tour with them. Naturally I was in school, but during the wintertime and spring. But it worked itself up to where I was able to basically join the whole band by the time I got to high school.
Right. Yeah. So as a kid growing up, I'm assuming that bluegrass was played or listened to a lot in your home, either jams, friends coming over, your father, or was that was the music all the time, or was there other stuff musically too?
Well, they worked so much. I think in 1950, was it 57? They were on the road over 300 dates. They played over 300 dates that year. And of course, they would come into town and we'd do the Old Dominion Barn Dance on Saturday night. But it was a lot of different types of music at that time, Christmas music and different things like that. But it wasn't called bluegrass back in those days. It was truly just old time music or string music, things like that. And so, you considered bluegrass music back in those days was the same thing as country music, only it was played acoustically. And that's the way that I remember growing up with it like that. Well, I mean, we knew all the country artists as well as we knew, Lester and Earl and Mac Wiseman and Bill Monroe and people like that. They were all on the Opry and doing things like that. So it was all just one big happy family is what I remember growing up with. Now, later on it changed and we started calling the genre bluegrass, but it wasn't probably until colleges, until we started playing the colleges that they nicknamed it bluegrass.
Yeah, I've had a couple of veterans from that era on the podcast and talking about playing with the Stanley brothers and so forth. And they said, no, we never called it bluegrass. It was either country music or mountain music, or people called it hillbilly music, but
right.
it wasn't bluegrass. Just the fact that Bill Monroe came from the bluegrass state, but the bluegrass name didn't really come on the music till later.
You're exactly right. It was called country and western basically is because Western swing was involved in it the same way as country was. I know Bob Wills was extremely popular, and different types. They just put everything together. Radio played it all. They just didn't play one type. They played every bit of it.
Yeah. So being young and, as you say, small, were you nicknamed Little Ronnie right off the bat? Like, here's Little Ronnie to sing for you, or kind of thing? Or?
Well, what it was, I was actually I was small for my age and short, and they would put me up in a chair. Excuse me, Chris. They would put me up in a chair to sing, and so that's when they started calling me Little Ronnie Reno. Whenever I was on the Old Dominion Barn Dance, they'd put me up in a chair, and I'd sing from a chair because I could get to the microphone that way, and so the people loved it. They just truly loved it.
So you never decided to just drop the knee and call yourself Ron? You always just were happy with Ronnie and still are?
Well, if I'd have called myself Ron or Ronald, I would have, Dad was called Don and his name was Donald, and my name was Ronald. And so, but I sort of went with Ronnie. I thought it flowed well, Ronnie Reno.
Yeah. So where do you live now in relationship to where you grew up?
Well, I'm in Gallatin, Tennessee, right out of Nashville right now. And of course, I've been in Nashville since let me see, I moved here in 1967 and started working with I started the Osborne Brothers in 68, or I believe it was. And so I had lived here a year earlier than that with my dad, but then we decided to move up to Riverdale, Maryland, and join up with Bill Harrell. And so we stayed up there about a year. And then I came back to Nashville and started working with Bobby and Sonny. And then, of course, Dad stayed up there. So I've been in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin area now since 1968.
Yeah. Wow, that's a long time. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I'm not saying you're old, but I mean, I'm probably about I'm 73. I'm not sure how old you are, but I mean,
Well,
time
I
goes
can
by,
get
right?
you. I can get you a little bit, Chris. I'm actually
Okay.
78.
Okay. So I've had a lot of guitar players on, heard them interviewed in other places, and they say when asked who their great guitar influences were, a lot of them would say Don Reno, and used to think Don Reno is a banjo player. How is he your guitar hero? But then I realized and heard some of his guitar playing, and I realized that's why they're so admiring of him, because he
Yeah,
was a very innovative and amazing guitar player too.
he truly was, Chris.
Yeah.
He learned a lot of the guitar work from Arthur Smith. I don't know if you're that familiar with Arthur Guitar Boogie Smith.
Yeah.
He was actually Arthur Smith had the very first million selling instrumental with Guitar Boogie, and Dad worked with Arthur for many years, and they learned all kinds of music. That's where a lot of the pop music came from that Dad played on the banjo, and of course the fiddle tunes. Dad loved to play the old fiddle tunes on the guitar, and so he was doing that. My gosh, back in the early '50s. So he truly had an amazing theory on his theory was wonderful on the guitar, the banjo, the mandolin, anything with strings on it. He really understood the theory of the instrument very well.
Yeah. So I guess him being a great banjo player, a guitarist, probably could play anything. So you were kind of stuck with the mandolin, right? You weren't going to play guitar with him in the band or banjo, I assume.
Well, I played mandolin for many years with him, and then when I went to work with Bobby and Sonny Osborne, I played
Yeah,
guitar.
right.
And then I played guitar when I was with Merle Haggard. I was with Merle for almost probably about 8 years, and I played guitar with him. And then after that, I came back and played guitar with my father for about a year with my brothers. And unfortunately, my dad passed away at a very young age. And so my brothers and I teamed up together, called the Reno Brothers, and we played together for about 15 years. And then they decided they wanted to play a real progressive bluegrass, so they created a group called Hayseed Dixie and toured together. In fact, the band is still going, but my brothers, they sort of burn out on it, and they're back in the States now. So
Yeah.
anyway, I've been playing guitar and mandolin. After they left, I started to pick the mandolin back up and did both. I played guitar and mandolin because my middle brother was the mandolin player in the band.
I've seen a video. I was surprised on YouTube of, I think it was a family band. There was three mandolins and a bass. Is that possible? In a
Oh yeah.
recording?
Well, this would have been after my brothers left. Well, I had a band on, with just me and one great musicians. My gosh, called the Reno Tradition, and I had a fiddle player that was a great mandolin player, and of course, I had a great mandolin player with me, and then I'd play mandolin with them. It was really a unique sound with the three. Mandolins, a banjo, and a bass. That we carried 5 pieces, and we played together. My gosh, for about 15 years, quite a while. And we worked up all these instrumentals, and we worked up all these songs with three mandolins because nobody was doing that, and we used to feature that a lot on the show. That was a segment on my show, and plus I did a TV show for many years called Reno's Old Time Music Festival here in Nashville, and we were on RFD TV. My gosh, for since it probably ran 12, 14 years on RFD. We had quite a great run on that TV thing, and so I would feature the three mandolins on that. And of course, when I did interviews, I always used the mandolin because normally whoever I was interviewing was playing guitar or banjo or singing, doing things like that. So it was easy for me to accompany them on the mandolin.
Right. So as a kid, I know your dad and Red Smiley were very close and played along together for a long time. Was Red Smiley kind of like a family member? Was he always over when they weren't touring and like hanging with you and eating with you guys, or was he had a separate life outside of uh, the Renos?
Well, Red, we actually all lived real close together,
You did.
and so they were gone so much, and so touring so much. But Red was like family to us. We didn't when we got back from working or touring or stuff like that. Everybody pretty much had their own life. They enjoyed fishing. They enjoyed antique cars. Red enjoyed going to Florida and fishing. And of course, at that time we were into different things in Virginia. This would have been in Roanoke, Virginia. And so, but Red was like family to us. Yeah. And I guess we were to him too. But Red didn't have any children at the time. He later on adopted a son. And but by that time, I was just about gone, about out of the circle, as they say. But anyway, Red was a wonderful man. I really enjoyed him. He passed away way too young. Red was only 47 years old when he passed away. So that really shocked us very much.
Yeah. Yeah. His legend, I mean, you would think he was around forever, considering how famous his name is, but I guess he didn't live long enough to really. I mean, he lived long enough to produce a lot of great music, but he was still in his prime, I guess.
Oh, he would have been today. My gosh, yes. Mac Wiseman lived to be 93, and Bobby Osborne lived to 92, and I think Jesse McReynolds lived to be maybe 93. But yeah, Red was gone way too early. But they created such a treasure of music during I guess about a 15-year span. They did wonderful stuff. I can't believe all the music that was created during that time.
Been doing a lot of listening to you and your bands and Reno and Smiley and Reno and Harold, and heard all these country stars saying, we're not going to go on stage after Reno and Smiley because they just blow us away. They put in their contract, we're not going to follow them. I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, see, they actually had a comedy group together called Chicken and Pansy Hot Rod, and all the little hot rods, and they would dress up with all these characters, and they would go out and they had these skits together. They had some of the funniest skits you've ever seen in your life, and so basically that was part of their show, that they would intertwine that into totally entertainment. Everything was totally structured for the fan and for the person that was sitting in the audience. And so a lot of people like Ray Price and different folks like that. I mean, I went on stage with Jim Reeves and did Billy Billy Bio when I was about maybe 12, 14, something like that. And so we used to work a lot with all the different bands. Patsy Cline was really sweet to me. I can go back. Tex Ritter, I used to pull Texas boots off when I was young. He'd say, son, you mind helping an old man out here? And I'd help him get his boots off.
That's classic. Wow.
But anyway, they were a hard act to follow because the crowds loved them when they got done. They wanted to see more, and that wasn't what the country stars wanted to hear,
Yeah. I wonder if, just thinking about that now, that the band Hot Rise with Tim O'Brien and Brian Sutton and those guys now used to come out as Red Knuckles and the Trailblazers in costume and wasn't so much a comedy routine, but they were pretty darn funny. I wonder if they kind of copied that idea from your dad's band.
I would imagine they had heard about Chicken Hot Rod. It would not surprise me at all, Chris, because he was a great comedian. He could entertain you. He really could. And people just loved to get him on stage with all his antics. And he loved W.C. Fields. And he could imitate W.C., his walk, his talk, everything about it. He loved the old character actors or comedy actors like that years ago. And so he would incorporate that into his stuff. And plus, with his musical ability and everything like that, what he could put in the banjo, the guitar, whatever he wanted to, also to add to it. And but anyway, we've gotten away from that down through the years to where it's just strictly the music. But used to, it was a rounded show. I mean, you did everything. You did a lot of the gospel. You did a lot of the standard music. You did a lot of comedy. You did recitations. It was well-rounded. The shows were at that time.
Yeah, I've had this discussion with lots of people, and we've presented a lot of bands here too over the years. And somehow, somewhere along the line, entertainment fell off the table with most bluegrass bands. There's just about the music. They hardly ever tell jokes. Sometimes they don't even look at the audience. They just play. It's kind of like, I don't know. People want to be entertained.
Oh, definitely so. I mean, and of course, it's such a trip to play the music because it's extremely fast, it's extremely challenging, and you get involved into it, and you forget about that. Hey, people actually paid money to sit here and watch a show and see the show, and so we need to cater more to them and play instead of trying to play the hot licks. How about playing the tune?
That's a good one. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. So your dad is often pictured with an old Martin, I guess D28 with the two pick guards. Was that guitar passed on through the bluegrass world? Is it still around today?
Yes, it is. It was a 1941 herringbone
Yeah.
28, and it's actually in the museum in Owensboro right now. They have the museum, the guitar. It was, believe it or not, in the Jerry Garcia exhibit they just had up there for the last 2 years. Um, Dad got to meet and work with Jerry Garcia many years ago on the West Coast. He produced one of their albums, not Reno and Smiley, but a you know musicians from the West Coast that they were doing. I think it was Frank Wakefield and Chubby Wise and Dad and I forget. Oh, David Nelson was involved in that with the New Riders, the Purple Sage, and so actually they featured that guitar because it was on Country Boy Rock and Roll. That's the guitar Dad used on that song, and so they were, it's still up there in the museum right now.
Wow. Yeah. So looking back, who were the people who really influenced you the most personally or musically, aside from your dad? Anybody that stands out that you really took to either their music or their way of living and kind of inspired you?
Oh, definitely. I had many, many heroes. Of course, Bill Monroe was a dear friend and a great teacher to me. We would sit around and play. Vassar Clemens was just such an inspiration to me. I love Vassar's playing, and he would come and stay with me a week at the time, and we would do nothing for that entire week but play music. And I loved the way he played everything backwards. He would approach it backwards rather than forwards, and so I learned a lot from him and Mike McGahey, who played fiddle with Dad, and Red would teach me a lot of the old fiddle tunes, and of course, Dad knew them too. So they wanted made sure I learned them exactly, note for note, the way that they learned them, and that was a big influence. Of course, Bobby Osborne and I played mandolins constantly together when I was with them. I actually recorded. We played twin mandolins on several things with the Osborne Brothers quite a few years ago. Whenever I was with them. So yeah, I'd say those are major influences to me in the bluegrass area. And of course, I always loved Ray Price, and of course, I love Merle Haggard. I finally, you know, I worked with Merle for 8 years and did some of the great recordings. I went with Merle in 1973 and stayed with him to 81. So I was fortunate enough to get involved in all those many, many hit records that Merle had.
Yeah. Yeah, I was certainly going to get to your time with Merle. That's interesting for everybody. Thanks to YouTube. YouTube is an amazing resource. You don't ever know what you're going to find on there. And I
I
saw
know it.
I saw a video of you. I think it was you playing mandolin behind the Stanley Brothers. Were you ever part of that band for a while? Did you perform with them, or
No, I
that's just a
wasn't.
one-off thing?
They were dear friends of ours. I may have got on stage and played with them at different times. I was fortunate enough to play, used to play upright bass with the Louvin brothers when they would come through town because they didn't carry a bass player. And things like that. Everybody played with everybody years ago. I mean, it was just if somebody's mandolin player didn't make it, well, then you stepped up and done it. You helped them out. And so, yeah, I probably, Curly Lambert, I think, was playing mandolin back in those days with the Stanleys, and he may have gotten sick or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I noticed in quite a few videos with either you or your dad, there was a fiddle player, a good-looking guy, always smiling and dancing around while he played, like a big grin on his face all the time. Do you know who that was? He just was constantly doing this up and down, dancing with his knees while he played the fiddle and smiled.
Yeah, that would have been Mac McGahey. That's who I was
Oh,
talking
okay.
about. Yeah,
Okay.
Mac played with Porter Wagner. He was sort of the little dancing fiddle man. They called him with the Porter Wagner show, and he was doing that same thing whenever he was with Dead and Red. He worked with them for many, many years, and what a great guy. I loved him dearly.
Yeah.
So getting on now to your time with Merle Haggard. I know you just mentioned before that back in those days, country and bluegrass weren't necessarily separate, musics. It was just whatever you call it. That was the music, and they would share a bill and whatever. What's your explanation for why country and bluegrass kind of went their separate ways? So today, country to me is hardly recognizable as anything that it was, whereas bluegrass is still pretty much bluegrass. Do you have a explanation for that? I've heard others, but
well, I guess the fact that we were all bluegrass is all acoustic with basically 5 to 6 instruments. That's the core. And country, of course, they were drums and piano and different instrumentation behind the singers. And they could use more production, with Nashville. The Nashville sound started coming in and doing so much stuff here in Nashville and popularized country music to another level. And it didn't, the bluegrass didn't move upwards like they're doing today. I mean, golly bum, I was actually, too far ahead of myself with my brothers and myself many, many years ago. Back in the early 90s, we were really pushing the envelope, and we pushed it too fast and too hard. But now I'd say they progressed to where they're broadening out the sound to where that you can play to bigger audiences. Used to, they didn't have the sound amplification that it took to push a mandolin out for 20,000 people to 25,000 people. Nowadays they do. They acoustic instrument, they can sound it exactly like they can a Telecaster guitar. So I think, and it split itself up that way. And then we started, radio sort of moved away from bluegrass country radio. And then we started our own bluegrass radio.
Right.
It sort of picked it up, in the college markets, and it became so big with the festivals and the hootenannies and things like that. That to me, it's the same thing. Still the same thing. Country and bluegrass to me is just it tells the story. Other than, I'd say bluegrass is more high end, more of a treble end, where that country is more mids, more low end, more attack on the drums, things like that. But mandolin has the attack too.
Would you consider yourself a country singer at heart?
Well, probably so, because my range was not as wide as Bobby Osborne's or Bill Monroe's. Even my dad's range was really the high end part of that, and I was easy for me to hit the mid to low, and then of course I did all the tenor work with Merle. But I got myself up into another register with him. I was fortunate enough that he was sort of a pure baritone anyway. And so I was able to blend with him to where that a lot of times in bluegrass, I wasn't able to get up to high, up to thinning my voice out to that.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say I'm probably a little bit of both now, because I understand it a little bit more after I've done both parts.
Mm-hmm.
When you got hired by Merle Haggard, did he actually call you on the phone, or how did that happen?
Roy Nichols called me. And of course I had been singing with the Osborne Brothers, and I had just left Bobby and Sonny. I was going to start on creating my own band. And actually I had a bunch of bluegrass festivals already booked to go out and do it with my own group. And then Roy Nichols called me and said that Merle had made some changes in the band and was wondering if I'd be interested in coming out and singing, playing guitar and singing with Merle. And I said, well, yeah, I'd like to, see what's going on. I said, but I've got my own career going. He said, well, that's all right. Merle will help you. I'd say so. So anyway, I went to California, and I got to sing some with Merle and Bonnie. I said, start with Merle. I don't even know if my voice blends with yours. And So we sang a couple songs. We sang Mama Tried, and me and Bonnie did the harmonies with him. He said, yes, your voice blends very well with mine. And so I said, well, I said, I'm from the East Coast. You're from the West Coast. I said, I'm not prepared to move to the West Coast, Merle. He said, well, I don't care where you live. He said, you can live on the East Coast. He said, as long as you're there when I need you. He said, I'll fly you. I said, well, let's try this thing for about 3 months and let's see how it works out. And so at the end of the 3 months, he said, well, are you going to get to stay? And I said, I think I will. So anyway, I was with him for 8 years instead of 3 months.
I guess that was quite a switch from, good bluegrass bands you're playing with to the level of a Merle Haggard, who was a huge superstar. What was the biggest change for you, going from, say, Osborne Brothers music and touring with them, playing, to suddenly being in huge stadiums with Merle Haggard's band? Was it a shock?
Well, actually, we had been opening for Merle for quite a while, for maybe a year. We'd opened all the shows for Merle, and I got to know him really well. And so it wasn't a big a shock because I'd already played in front of some of the crowds that he was drawing. But when I got with him, my gosh, the very first show I did with him was with the Hollywood Bowl. And so I wasn't prepared for the size of that the crowds had grown into, because we were just basically doing, the East Coast openings for Merle, because he would use different bands to open for him. But when he came on the East Coast, the Osborne Brothers did a lot of the opening for Merle. So, but it was a totally different experience than working with a bluegrass band and carrying your own amp and carrying your own stuff and setting your own stuff up. I mean, we had people that production that hauled all of our stuff and set them up and did all that stuff. We just walked out and started playing and singing. So yeah, it was a different thing right at that time, but it's working, I think, nowadays a little bit better. I laughed at Merle, one of the shows towards the end of his life. I went and seen him up in Kentucky and up at Renfro Valley. And I was watching him on stage, and he said, I want everybody to know we've got the oldest country touring band in country music. He said, well, we used to have roadies, he said, but now we travel with nurses. So I did miss the roadies when I left, I'll say that.
Yeah, that's funny. When you joined up with Merle, did anybody take you aside and give you a little advice? Say, son, this is how we do things here. Aside from, make sure you're there on time and you're dressed and you're in tune. But was there any special advice you got from Merle or any of his bandmates that just be careful of this or something?
No, it wasn't really, because Merle was, he was with you. He was great to work with. In other words, as far as he was concerned, you didn't work with him. You didn't work for him. You worked with Merle. And he was a big supporter of my career. He said, I'll help you. And in fact, he let me do a vocal on his 30th album. Things like that. I mean, Merle gave me a record contract with MCA Records. Different things like that. He was very supportive of anybody that wanted to excel, because Glenn Campbell had been doing all the harmony on his records before I went with him. And so it was quite Glenn had stepped out on his own and was having hit after hit after hit. And so, I said, well, that's a big plus to have Merle Haggard in your corner and supporting you. And he did. He supported me the whole time I was with him. He was all for me, having my own career, doing my own thing, being my own artist.
My kids get a kick out of when they see photos of me back in the 70s with my long hair, and I've seen some videos of you opening up for Merle, or with Merle, with that long blonde hairdo. It's kind of fun to look back on the stylistic changes that we all went through.
Oh boy, I'd say it was. Yeah, I get I just, instead of buying a toupee, I just bought a nice a hat that I wore for years and years. but I always say I had it whenever I needed it. Whenever I met my wife and married her in 1970, I had a lot of hair, so I had it when I needed it.
Yeah, yeah. I know you would often open shows for Merle Haggard, and did that ever scare the daylights out of you when you started doing that, or were you comfortable going out by yourself in front of all these people and singing a song with a
I was
guitar?
not comfortable.
Oh,
I had always been used to going out, with the Osborne Brothers or with my dad, with Reno and Smiley. And whenever they introduced Ronnie Reno and the Strangers, believe me, it was quite a different adrenaline rush. It was a little bit of fear, but it was also excitement. And whenever we started playing, well, then I settled right into what I was trying to do. But like I said, when I sang a song at the Hollywood Bowl and opened for Merle, it got my attention.
that's a nice way of putting it. Yeah. Did you ever get so nervous before a show that you would like get sick or something? I know some performers get real anxious and nervous, and before a show they can't talk to people. They maybe even throw up, and then they're fine. You ever have anything like that, or you just went out and played and got used to it?
Well, I started when I was so young that fear
Yeah.
wasn't part of it, and so no, I never did. I never did have that that kind of a fear. It was like my fear was, I hope I don't forget the words to this song and make myself look crappy, or look like an idiot. That was the fear that I was having more than just so nervous I was wanting to throw that.
Yeah.
Fortunately, that never happened to me that way. But not saying it probably shouldn't have. It just never did.
Did you ever forget the lyrics and have to just improvise, or like what would you do?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what would you do if it just didn't come to you in the second, you just couldn't remember the second verse, how it
Well,
started?
I would just rewrite the song. I mean, I'd say, well, they haven't heard it. I mean, they don't really know exactly the whole lyrics to what I'm doing, but yeah, that happened to me. I think I was doing a John Denver song with Merle. This was at Harris Casino, and I forgot the second verse to the thing. And I just started singing this, that, and the other. And of course, everybody started laughing because they knew I'd forgotten the dang lyrics of it. But I made it through. I made it through.
Like it's usually the second verse of a song. I don't know. The first one you kind of know, and then you go to the chorus and maybe a couple of solos. And the second one comes along, your mind goes blank, right? And you just like, ah.
Well, exactly. You start listening to the instrumentation during the break, and that was my problem. Everybody was playing beautiful harmonies together. I mean, my gosh, we were touring with a 12-piece band at that time, and so and plus in Harrah's we had a string section, so we had the whole shebang down out there, and it was quite a thing just to listen to yourself. And so I'd be listening to the strings and be listening to Roy Nichols and Norman Hamlet and Tiny Moore and Don Markham playing sections. They would do sections on songs. And you just forget where you are. You're in heaven anyway. So,
Do you have a favorite Merle Haggard story you could tell us? I'm sure you have so many, it's probably hard to pin one down.
Well, I'd have to think back at some of the stories. There was quite a few of them, but I don't have. They're all wonderful, wonderful stories. But it takes a while to tell them, and if I leave something out, I do have one that was sort of funny. Anyway, we all got a little intoxicated on one of his shows in Arizona one time, and so Merle had a meeting after the show, and he said, I'll tell you what. He said, I'll just consider if you guys are not able to perform, that you just didn't want to work that night. You just wanted to take the time off. You want to take that night off. And he said, by the way, he said, you won't get paid that night. And he said, it goes tenfold for me. He said, if that ever happens to me, he said, I'll just pay everybody what we were going to make that night. And so it wasn't 2 weeks later, he got all tore up out in Fresno, California at the fair, run out there and did 20 minutes, thought he'd been out there an hour and 20 minutes and took off and sang Okie and went and got on the bus and they took off. Well, the crowd was highly furious, just mad as a wet hen. So we all left in a hurry too. We was going to the airport to go somewhere. So we met Merle down in L.A. and I think Red Lane got on the bus and said, Merle, he said, you owe us $10,000. He said, you remember the deal you made with us? And I think Merle at that point was getting $10,000 a night. And Merle said, by that time, he'd sort of straightened up a little bit. He said, yeah, I do remember. So we all got the $10,000 and split it amongst the band.
Oh, wow. Well, he was true to his word. That was pretty good.
Oh, he was. Believe me, he said, let's just forget this thing about he said, we'll work through it here after this,
Can I talk a little bit about the mandolin? What do you have a favorite mandolin that you have kept through the years and still enjoy?
Yes, I do have. My dad bought me a Lloyd Loar in 1960, and it's a 23 F5 Loar. It's quite an instrument. It truly is. I still have it today. In fact, I've got quite a few instruments now that down through the years that I've been able to purchase and get. But this mandolin it's really it's a piece. It was the same year that Bill Monroe's mandolin, which, his was a 1923 Gibson. And so I was fortunate enough to get that. I remember we were playing an outdoor park up in Anderson, Indiana. And this tall redheaded guy came to us after our show up there, and he said, I was playing a little A mandolin. He said, Don, he said, I've got a mandolin back in Dayton, Ohio. He said, I said, I'd like to see Ronnie get this instrument. He said he would appreciate it, and he said he's going to be a fine musician. He said, I actually was going to keep it for my son, but he said he's playing a danged old saxophone now, and he said I'd like to see it go to somebody that really would appreciate it. And so he told Dad what he had, and Dad said, well, he said, now, if that's what you say it is, he said, we're recording in Cincinnati in the next 3 days. We're going from here on over to Cincinnati and record. He said, bring it over there. And he said, if it's what you say it is, he said, I'll pay you what you want for it. And so we were standing out at King Records there in Cincinnati. They had a loading dock where they'd load all the boxes of albums and this, that, and the other. And we were standing out there in between a break, and he started walking down. Dad seen him coming down through there carrying a mandolin case. Well, Dad started getting a little antsy at that point. He just saw the mandolin case, and when he did it, he came over. The gentleman brought it over and throwed it up on a stack of records and opened the case, and it was a 23 Loar. And my dad got real nervous then, and so he bought it for me. And I would love to see the check that my father wrote this man, because Dad had a beautiful handwriting, but this check he wrote him, he got nervous. I asked my mom several times if she had that check, and she said, no, son, I don't have it, but I'd love to have seen that check. But anyway, Dad bought me that 23 Loar at that day. So
you're saying his writing was a little shaky on that check?
It was very, very shaky, but he was able to get the amount for the mandolin out there, and for his signature on it. And of course, when I was with Bobby and Sonny, see, they were living in Dayton about that time, and the gentleman had tried to sell it to Bobby, and Bobby later came to me and told me, he said, Ronnie, he said, I had a good mandolin myself right then. He said, but he said, I'd have probably bought that mandolin. He said, but I didn't have enough money to buy it. And I said, thank you very much, Bobby. I hate you didn't have no money, but I'm glad you didn't have any at that time.
So what year would this have been, do you think?
It was 1960 that Daddy bought this mandolin for me. And it didn't have a scratch on it. Did not have one scratch on it. It looked like it was brand new when he got it for me. In fact, it's on the album covers that you see with us with the red jackets on. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those albums.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, that's the mandolin right there.
And you still have it?
Oh, yes, sir. I definitely still have it.
So my curiosity gets the better of me. Do you remember what he paid for it, or would you rather not say?
Well, no, I don't mind saying he paid $350 for it.
Mm-hmm. Which was a lot back then.
Oh, well, yeah.
For a mandolin,
Well,
I'd
yeah. I
imagine.
mean,
Yeah.
I remember Dale Sled bought, when he bought a 35 herringbone from George Gruen and paid him $600. This would have been in 69. 60, yeah, and I told Dale, I said, boy, he really rooked you. He paid him 600 for that herringbone, which is probably worth 150 grand right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So you did a lot of TV music shows and media stuff in your life. I know. Great stuff. How did you get into that, from being a performing musician to wanting to be on camera and talk to other musicians and that kind of stuff?
Well, I was sort of raised in television back in Roanoke, Virginia. We had an early morning TV show for many, many years there on WDBJ. And this would have been started in 57. And so they were just doing one night a week in 57. And then in late 58, I guess, it went to doing an early morning show where they would get together and do an hour and a half every morning. And so I got used to doing that with them. I'd get up before I went to school and go down there and do the show with them. And so I was familiar with television. And when I moved to Nashville, I became good friends with Stan Hitchcock. I don't know if you're familiar with Stan or not, but he was actually one of the founders of country music television here in Nashville. And he was a great entertainer himself. He basically had some good big records back in those days, back in the late 60s. But he got into television. And so Stan and I became very close friends. And so he started his own network called Americana Network. And he told me, he said, Ronnie, would you be interested in doing a bluegrass show on that network? I said, absolutely. And we had like 15 million homes at that time. And so I got in 93, we went to Renfrew Valley, Kentucky, and I shot my first series of shows up there. I think I shot 10 shows in about a 3-day span. And it started it off, and it lasted until I basically pulled it off the air in 2020 at RFD TV.
Do you prefer to be the person asking the questions, or do you like to be the person answering the questions?
I sort of was comfortable asking, but I enjoy talking about the music. It's naturally it was bred in me, so I'm enjoying today. Chris, thank you for asking me to do this with you.
I'm enjoying it too, believe me, and my listeners will. So looking back at your life in music, 60 years at least, is there anything you would have done differently, knowing what you know now about music and you?
Oh, Lord, yeah.
Uh-oh. We have another hour.
Well, I mean, you have a broader view of the music is such a, oh my gosh, everybody understands the music in one way or the other. And when you're just basically, you're excited about learning it to start with, but once you finally have done it so long, you have different approaches to the music. And so I very well could have taken it's all timing. I've always thought that music industry and the music business and the entertainment industry is if your timing is correct. If you're doing this song at the right time, that you have enough people that really want more of this song and more of songs like that, then there's so many talented people that never really get to the stardom part that they should. They've got the entertainment, they've got the natural born part of them that it takes to do that. But what I would do is I would look at it in 3 or 4 different ways nowadays, where instead I was only focused in one way before. I wanted to go down this lane and do it this way, but I would approach it different today.
Did you ever at any point in your life consider getting out of music business and doing something else for a while?
No, I never did. I was so fortunate because I basically was fortunate enough to get into I know Sam Bush and I have talked about it many times, and we were fortunate that the timing was perfect to be involved in the music industry in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and even up to today, that you got to see so much and do so much and entertain so much that I basically never even thought about it because things went along very well for me. I was always fortunate enough to be able to make a good living and provide for my family and raise my family and have some of the best friends that you could ever possibly have through music. Music is a universal language; everybody understands it. So, I don't think I could have done anything else but what I did, Chris.
Mhm.
I often think about bluegrass just from what I'm familiar with and know about it, and think about kind of some big moments in the popular culture in bluegrass. You know, the Circle Be Unbroken album was a huge popular bluegrass kind of country thing, and then the infamous movie Deliverance was a big public,
Oh, sure.
display of the music, and then Oh Brother was a huge thing. Today we have a superstar in bluegrass, Billy Strings, who's really taken it in a way to a whole different level where it never was before, like playing night after night at 20,000 people all over the world, and young people going crazy over it. I just wonder if there's any kind of downside to having any one person represent bluegrass to the general public. I mean, not the bluegrass, diehards, but the general public who's really caught on to Billy Strings as this is what bluegrass is. Because bluegrass is so many things. I
Right.
just wonder what your take is. I mean, I'm not asking you to comment on Billy Strings personally, just whether it's what you think about having one person be like this huge focus.
Well, I'm actually glad we got one that could basically tell
Yeah.
people or try to let them explain because Billy is such a great artist. I mean, he is one fine guitar player and he performs and I'm glad for Billy. Um, I know it's a lot of stress. It's a lot of he must be careful that he just doesn't completely burn himself out. But he's representing us wonderfully that I see. I mean, Billy will go back and he'll pay a homage to the great artists that we have, the legends. I mean, he does a ton of my dad's songs on his show, and I'm happy that he does because he's doing Long Gone and he's doing Drifting with the Tide and he's doing all these things that Dad and Red did. But yet he's also doing Bill Monroe. He's doing Platt and Scruggs. He's doing he's doing Ralph Stanley. I mean, doing Larry Sparks. I mean, he's doing it all and really tipping his hat to them. But he's doing it in the way I was telling you before, Chris. He's entertaining the people. He's got the production going now. He's got the lights. He's got the big sound. He's jumping all over the stage. He is entertaining like you were at a rock festival, you know. So my brothers was doing that with the little group called Hayseed Dixie over in Europe. They were considered a rock band over there, but they were all playing just strictly bluegrass music with a mandolin, a banjo, guitar, and a bass. And so Billy's doing it, and he's doing it great, and it's fitting very, very well with I think our younger folks that really might come up and say, "Hey, I really like that instrumentation, that five pieces together," and that's what bluegrass is those five instruments that's joined together as one. And he's doing. I couldn't be more proud of Billy.
That's the nicest answer I've ever heard anyone say about Billy Strings and his popularity. So thank you for that, because I know there's in certain circles there might be a little resentment because he's so famous and people have been playing their whole lives are struggling to make a living. But I think you're putting it very well. He's paying homage to all the greats that got him there, and I think that's why people appreciate it.
Well, that'll carry on the legacy. It's what it will, because I remember Merle telling his wife one time she wanted him to quit, and he said, "Well," he said, "let me tell you how this will go." He said, if I quit and go back to the ranch and close the gate, he said, nobody will ever come and ask me to open it up again. He said, they'll forget me that fast. And he said, so I think I'll stay on this side of the gate. And that's sort of where Billy's at with the bluegrass music. I'm glad to see him on this side of the gate with us.
You still get together with your musical pals and play just for fun, get together and jam or play a few songs? I mean, obviously you still play, right? You're not, just because you quit the business, you're not quitting playing at all.
No, I'm not. I don't do that. I play with my youngest son, Justin. He's a fine musician. That isn't what he does. He just does it because he loves it. But he and I get together and we play, and he's really interested in the family legacy and this, that, and the other. And so, and of course, every once in a while I'll get together with some little young ones and play a little bit and doing it that way. But I just don't do a lot out in public anymore. It's just basically for my own. I have to scratch my own itch. I'd say it that way.
If you were going to lead a little bluegrass jam, and say in your town or something, what would be the first song that you would kick off? Just like an informal jam with some people. Any particular song that you'd start off with?
Well, it would have to be basically a 3-chord song that everybody could really enjoy. Sitting on Top of the World is one of the greatest kickoff songs for a jam session, because you can do it slow, you can do it fast, you can do it medium, you can do it any which way you want to. You can do it country, you can do it western swing, you can do it bluegrass, and so that's always a good one to start with.
There's always a discussion that jams around here as to whether that song has a minor chord in it or not.
It does not.
Does not. Okay.
Well, it's an old western swing song, basically, and I don't think they put the minor in it. Now, bluegrass, you could put the minor in it. It's all for adaptation, the way you adapt to it any which way. But I've played it both ways. I've played it western swing, and I've also played it in the bluegrass genre too.
Uh-huh. So you've played, performed, recorded, met, hung out with so many musicians. Is there anybody in the history of music that you would have loved to play with but never got the opportunity?
Well, fortunately, I was just fortunate enough to play with so many great ones. And the time I grew up, they were just every which way. I mean, they were all making their stamp on music too. I mean, Patsy Cline had just started recording whenever I was growing up. And of course, Jim and Jesse were just getting really rolling, and the Osborne Brothers and different things like, in different genres. I was fortunate enough to go out and tour with Ray Price for about 3 weeks one time. And I really enjoyed that. Ray was, he was quite an artist. I loved his singing. And so, I was fortunate enough to be able to to play with different folks. I got to jam with Buddy Emmons on the steel guitar and different things like that people would love to do it. But I was just in the right place at the right time to be able to do things like that. And so I consider myself, it's been an honor for me to be able to do that kind of stuff, Chris, for sure.
Yeah.
Is there anything we should have covered in this chat but didn't that you'd like to say? We covered a lot of ground here, I know.
No, I do appreciate your call, and I hope your viewers, or your listeners, not viewers. I am in TV, but I hope your listeners will enjoy some of this stuff. It's been an honor for me to be in this entertainment, and it's fed me for many, many years. And I have to thank the people that made that possible, which are the people that buy your records and buy tickets to get in to see you. So hats off to all your fans, Chris.
Well, that's a nice way to end this hour-long chat. And I have learned a lot and enjoyed chatting with you, Ronnie. So take care of yourself, and maybe we'll meet in person someday. I don't know. I'm way up in Connecticut, so I don't know. But you never know.
It's been a while since I've been up there for sure. But hopefully you'll get to Nashville someday, Chris. Yeah. Look me up.
I will. Yes, sir. Okay. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed our podcast, and thanks for listening. Visit our website, guitartownct.com, for concert and podcast schedules, or just to send us a message. We'd love to hear from you.